message kind of across.
Yeah.
No, that's huge, Gabor, honestly, and it makes sense to us, I would say, professionally speaking, or what we focus on specifically for stress levels. We present something that is called optimal zone of natural excellence, and you might have seen this graph where it explains that for each specific performance there is and specific person, individual. For you to be in the optimal state where you perform the best, you need to be in a specific level of your stress. Yeah. And as you said, it's different when you are in the burning building or when you are on putting in golf. Yeah. So, or you are just talking in the office with your coworker. there's another challenge here. But it makes so much sense, and breath is a huge tool to really play with the arousal as well, right? And really play with those stress levels within moments. We talked about different ways how to breathe, and I would love to get a little more specific, but I'm wondering which direction we should take it. What kind of breath, maybe I would ask, what kind of breath do you find most beneficial and helpful?
Well, I think it also, going to what we just talked about, it really, I think it depends what the outcome or what we're trying to kind of accomplish. And you just mentioned something else that I think is hugely important that very much resonated with me. And I talk about this in all of my teachings with all my clients too, that all of these things are incredibly experiential, right? And this is why practice is so important, and it's imperative that we practice, because we need to experience how these techniques work, right? Someone gives you the framework, and but you have to experience how that works in your body and how you can use it. Of course, there's these basic truths that are based on our anatomy, biochemistry, and all those things. However, still, we each of us have very, very different makeups, anatomical makeups, mental makeups. We all have different experiences. We all carry different traumas, different cultural upbringing, and all those things that make us show up in a certain way in any and every situation. So, so if I'm giving someone a tool, that's going to be received through the lenses of those. Therefore, I think it's very important that you as an individual experiment with it, play around with it, and see how you can use it. So I'm not answering your question yet, but I think that's a little framing of that. So to answer your question, I really think it depends on, if you're talking kind of hoping to develop like long-term impacts and long-term, healthy habits, or we're talking about, trying to address a certain stressful situation or a certain situation through our breath. But if you're saying that, that just kind of like, well, just what's the best word? Like, how should I breathe? Really, what I would always start anyone out, especially if breath work or mindfulness is not something that you've had a lot of previous experience with, I would say start by focusing on that horizontal lower body breath, which the first step to it is what we all probably heard about, is a belly breath. Belly breath is not the end goal, but that is the first best step to understand how our body is actually designed to breathe. And again, just to quote one of my favorite experts on this topic, Dr. Belissa Vranich, she always says that that's how you used to breathe, and that's how your body wants to breathe, meaning this lower body diaphragmatic breath. And there's really interesting research of why we go away from that, right? I have a newborn, and although newborns don't have the diaphragm that they're gonna have until they're like 5 or 6 months old, so I don't say that he has a perfect diaphragmatic breath, but he definitely has a belly breath. You see a baby, or you see a dog, if you have a cat or a dog, they breathe through their diaphragm. You don't see a dog, like lifting their arms up into their ears when they're breathing, and it's simply because that's not how the body is designed, right? We're not using, well, most of us, if you don't deal with oh, are you guys still there?
Yeah.
I think I went away from but basically most of us use not our primary breathing muscles. We use ancillary muscles, shoulders, chest, neck, and breathe like this. Again, that's where the term vertical breath comes from, up and down, versus horizontal, meaning expanding and contracting with each breath. So to answer the question again, short is I would start by focusing on belly breathing, and there's obviously millions of videos out there to teach you how to do that, but I think that would be a first step. Again, that's not the end goal. The end goal is to have a full body diaphragmatic breathing, where the biggest breathing muscles, which is our diaphragm that sits under the lungs, kind of keeps moving with each breath. For a lot of people, most of us, that doesn't happen unless we tune in with that and start focusing through the belly breathing. If you're talking about like kind of like the singular moments of like, okay, that's great if I want to go long term, and of course that is the foundation, right? And I think I failed to mention this earlier when we talk about the buckets. The first bucket is how to develop an optimal breathing pattern for life. Everything else, all the other buckets are based on this. We need to have this under lockdown to be able to effectively do these other things. Now, of course, there's many techniques that like pattern breathings and box breathing and all these things that you hear that are absolutely amazing, but they're going to be that much more amazing if we first figure out that first bucket, which is starts with the belly breath. But if you're talking about the singular moments of adversity, I'm stressed out, what can I do right now? I would say that elongated exhale. That's kind of like your best tool to go to. And what we mean by that is just playing with the ratio of your inhales or your exhales. Doesn't matter how long your inhale is, just try to make sure that your exhale is a little bit longer. And then of course, then you try to increase the ratio. So I'm like breathing in for 2 seconds, and I just demonstrated a very bad vertical breath. But if it takes you 2 seconds, then try to have your exhale 2.5 seconds, then go to 3 seconds, and then go to 4 seconds. Ideally, twice as long as your inhale in those singular moments of adversity. And the last kind of quick tip I would give, if as far as we talk about pattern breathings, and they're becoming very popular for a good reason, but as far as pattern breathing, you hear about 2-3-6, you hear about 3-3 box breathing, 3-3-3-3, meaning the inhale retention, exhale retention. There's another amazing book that I don't know if I recommended to you all yet. Breath by James Nestor. It's a relatively new book. It's absolutely amazing. But he talks about the 5-second breath, and apparently about 5.5 seconds is the ideal length of time for each the inhale and the exhale. So if you want to start any sort of practice, maybe you just sit down and try to breathe 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. Of course, it's okay if it's 5, it's okay if it's 6, but that in that range, that's when all our bodily systems fire the most efficient, most effective way.
Actually, I believe that 5.5 is recommended for increasing your HRV, heart rate variability, which is the difference between the speeds how your heart is beating on your inhale and the speeds or frequency by which your heart is beating on the exhale. These frequencies are different, and we want them to be different because that's a sign of well operating the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branch and the nerves in our body. So I believe that's actually the ratio there as well recommended for increasing the HRV that is related to resilience as well, actually through some studies. If we go a little bit to where it's resilience, how how do you define resilience? What does resilience mean for you, Gabor?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I mean, if I wanted to answer it with one word, which I can never do, I can never answer anything with one word. So I'm gonna try right now. I will say flexibility, or maybe adaptability is the ability to respond to the surroundings. And to me, again, there's two aspects of it: the long term and the short term. Responding, again, not reacting, but responding calmly to the situation at hand. But then, of course, the compounding effect is the ability to respond to the long-term accumulation of those impacts. And I think, again, kind of this is where our breath can be an incredible tool, because we can use them in the singular moments of adversity and stress, but also can develop patterns that will serve us in the long term. So to me, it's the kind of like the ability to recover quickly and recover as fully as our accumulated impacts and past traumas and backgrounds allow us to do. And that's a long process, right?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you try to connect the breath work with resilience, and even you might have answered this question already, in regards to what kind of breath would you recommend? And of course, we know it does depend on a lot of things. But if we can, maybe for a second, be overgeneralizing the topic, what kind of breath work would come to your mind in regards to improving resilience?
I mean, I think basically those three basic, not even techniques, but the three basic tips that we already shared, is cultivating a lower body breath, horizontal breath, maybe the 5-count breath, or for stressful situations or moments is elongating the exhale. But what's interesting is, one of my teachers, again, I'm going to have to tag Dr. Belissa in this, because I referenced her so much. She's an absolute expert on the topic. But really, her approach to breath work, which is I think is very unique in the field, is that her biggest focus is fixing the biomechanics of the breath before doing anything else, right? Before we even go to the 5-count breath, before we try to do any of the breath holds and all these quote unquote more advanced practices, her big focus, and this is what I try to do with my clients and athletes in particular, is fixing the biomechanics, developing that the diaphragmatic full body breath before we try to move on to any other complicated techniques. And in her view, once you fix the biomechanics, a lot of the other things actually kind of will fall in line. Like the pattern that you breathe and the the biochemistry that is tied to it. Once you develop a full diaphragmatic breath, a lot of those things fall in place. And even if they don't automatically fall in place, everything else that you do, you can do so much more effectively. And I think for at least the demographics that I tend to work I think this is pretty intuitive, right? We understand that first, whether you're a basketball player, a football player, you're trying to throw or you're trying to run, first you start by zooming in and honing in on your technique before you try to go out and play your sports, right? Because otherwise, if no one teaches you, you go out on the basketball court and you look like me, and you don't want to.
That's for you, training first.
But you know what I mean. You fix the movement patterns, and again, it comes back to how basic and how foundational the breath is, because our breath is our most foundational movement pattern, right? You can sit here and not move your arms or legs or not do anything, but your body is moving. But the question is how, where, and how much is it moving, right? And this is kind of, not to get totally deep down into it, but what Dr. Belissa calls two areas of the location of movement and range of movement. Where is your body moving when you're breathing? Is it moving here or is it moving down here? That's a location of movement. And then the range of movement. How much is it moving? I'm like sipping tiny, tiny little sips of air, or am I expanding fully and contracting fully? So that's for, especially for athletes, like your the way you use your body really gonna come down on your breath. And then of course we know whether you're a firefighter or an army officer, any movement is gonna have to travel through the core area of your body, your lower body. So if your lower body is not active, you're not breathing with your lower body, you're leaving chips on the table. You're not taking full advantage of your movement pattern, whether you're trying to run faster, whether you're trying to generate more power or just gain more balance. You have to move here, down here when you're breathing to be able to do that. I feel like I went off a little bit of a tangent, but did I even answer your question?
No, no. We did understand everything.
We did.
Yeah.
We were wondering if you were freezing or not, but no, absolutely following you.
Yeah.
100% on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I actually would have a follow-up question, and it's a very specific one. I try to focus on the location of movement as regards to the range of movement. And in regards to the range of movements, I found something very interesting, and it's the book, and Dr. Belissa Vranich talks a lot about narrowing your middle body, your belly, right, on your exhale. So intentionally utilizing your muscle to do that breath out, that exhale. And something I found very interesting is that when I exhale a little bit of more air than I would normally do, which probably prolongs the exhale itself, it puts me into that calmer state much more. Is that something you have experience with as well?
Yes, I have, and I think that's a pretty general thing across the board. That often, like when we're in a lot of the techniques and a lot of the performance aspects, a lot of our understanding, or I think conventional wisdom, goes immediately to the inhale, right? Like, how much air do I bring in? Like, how big is my inhale? How much I can expand my lungs to do that? That's kind of where I think intuitively most of us go. And the exhale is pretty underrated, right? It's almost, and often actually, and I think I'm by no means a therapist, so please don't quote me on this, but my understanding is too, when often when working with therapy patients, and even with asthmatic patients, often, or as a matter of fact, hyperventilation, often it happens because of a insufficient exhale. Right? There's basically not enough. You're not emptying your body enough to be able to take that big breath, right? So if we're looking at my water bottle, if it's full like this, I only have this much that I can bring in. If I empty it all the way, then I have the capacity to bring in more air. So yes, using the belly, and this is where I geek out and what gets so exciting for me, on how it ties into movement patterns. And this is, of course, where yoga in my mind comes in, is what are the muscles that we're using, and what parts of our bodies we're using, not just when we are breathing, but also when we are moving. And I think, again, this is present in a lot of Eastern teachings, again, from martial arts to yoga, is the concept of these energy locks, or even just center of gravity in our body, right? We talk about belly breath, but and this is a great starting point, but really what often I encourage folks to do, especially ones that have some sort of experience with this a little bit, is actually to focus a couple of inches below the navel and inside your belly button. That is where, you know, from a movement perspective, that is where the actual center of our gravity is. So working from that point, you find more balance, but also that's where you find more strength. You find more agility, more, not to get too esoteric, but from an energetic standpoint, also we consider you know, our core, our strength right there in martial arts and in yoga. So to answer your question, I think definitely yes, pulling that belly in. Again, what muscles are we using too? And not to get too deep, but it's not just the belly, right? We have the intercostals, we have our abdominals. Our core also includes our lower back, actually the back muscles running all the way up to our traps. It of course is the diaphragm, but also one very underrated and often not even talked about area is the perineum. Right. If we look at, again, if we see this as being the part of our body that we're trying to breathe, our perineum is the bottom part of the container. Maybe the top part is our speech box, and somewhere here is the diaphragm, right? So this is the area that we're working with for balance, control, but also for pressure regulation, right? That's the diaphragm is our biggest pressure regulator in the body, and also just happens to be our best detoxing mechanism. If the diaphragm moves, we're massaging the inner organs, we're massaging the digestive system, we're triggering that also famous or becoming popular vagus nerve that again puts us into rest and digest. And I feel like I'm going way deep and maybe even off topic, so stop me please.
Never for us.
No, and I know we mentioned it before. We could talk for hours about this. I mean, to be honest, because the rabbit hole, I would say, in the best ways, goes so deep. I mean, you can learn so much about mechanics and impacts and all that stuff. So I'm soaking it all in. Like, okay, I need to have my notebook here and say, okay, belly breathing, below the navel, you know. So I hope other people are taking notes because this is good stuff right here. I love it. Absolutely, for me, some things I need to go back and work on myself with all of the details that you're providing here today, Gabor. So, no, I like that.
Yeah. I would say that I would totally recommend, and I see the connections between what you are saying and what is explained in the book, Breathing for Warriors, and that's one of our first resources, really on breathing, and there's so much useful, practical, and understandable information it's just incredible, and it connects with what you are saying exactly. So just a quick reminder of Dr. Vranich and her work.
Absolutely. And I would say even her first book would maybe even be a better starting point. Read for folks that are really just really new and just kind of trying to learn. I think it's a beautiful, very practical way of describing kind of the mechanics that we just talked a little bit about. But for more of just a general understanding of like, oh, I'm curious about the breath, I definitely recommend Breathe by James Nestor. I'm sorry, Breath by James Nestor. I think the subtitle is New Science of a Lost Art or something along those lines. It is an incredible book, but it's very very readable. It's a fun read. Some of this sometimes gets a little drier, a little mechanics. So if you're the type of person that like, oh, the dry mechanics, I'm an engineer, I want to read that, that's great. But if you're more like kind of just interested in an overall picture of breathing, they discuss a lot of different techniques, where they come from and all those things. I would recommend James Nestor's book a lot.
Okay. No, such great information. I think it definitely builds upon some of the things we've post it on our Instagram profile. It builds on even, some of the stuff we have implemented within our training course. We've gone that much deeper. But I was going to go somewhere with that comment. Gosh, and I just literally forgot what I was going to go to with what I was saying. Shucks. Gosh. Okay. Well, hopefully it comes back. I personally even have more questions for you, but I think I'll shoot you an email after this because we're coming up on time and everything like that. So as we, get ready to close out, I have a question for you. Where can folks who tuned in today connect with you further, learn more about Breathworks, and get additional information from you?
Yeah, so thanks for asking that. I guess the easiest one is through my Instagram profile, which I'm using that right now. So I'm sure it's showing up somewhere, but it's Breathlete. And if you're like, oh, what is Breathlete? It's just a play of words on the connection of breath and athlete. So it's Breathlete. The Instagram handle is Breathlete. I also have a Facebook page, Breathlete, where I post resources, free classes, and all those things. And of course, my website, which is breathlete.com, where I have actually quite a few free resources too, both on yoga. Sorry, I think my phone is doing something funny. But on yoga, meditation, and breathing, free videos, classes, PDF downloads, downloadable audio, guided meditation, and all sorts of things. So breathlete.com and Breathlete on social.
Outstanding.
We'll put it into comments afterwards.
Absolutely.
Gabor, that was amazing. Honestly.
Yeah.
A lot of practical information and a lot of I love honestly how you explain the context behind each information that you provide, and it all, at least to me, makes sense. And that's super valuable for someone that's just watches the chat or wants to learn just a little bit more, maybe is at the beginning of the process and gets a little bit hungrier for getting more information. And hopefully we'll be able to set up the chats again and focus on some specific area that brings to some attention and interest and is valuable. That's what we would love to.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for having me. I feel a little bit sometimes like those bunny rabbits, or like you just pull the thing and I just like go off. So I apologize for the long answers. There's never a one-word answer out of me, but I think it's important to give context to, especially some of these concepts where again there's a lot of information out there. That gets pretty confusing. So I appreciate you all having me on. I very much enjoyed it, and anytime I'd be more than happy to keep this going or keep anything and other things going.
Excellent. Yeah, and we would love to have you again, and we appreciate that context and those long answers. So no worries on our end here. We think it was just vital information for those who tuned in with us today. So thank you so much for that, Gabor, and thanks for being here with us and want to do this with us for our very first one. Thank you for being our first guest. We truly appreciate that.
Yeah. Honored.
Everyone else, we will include the contact information for Gabor as well. And so if you have any questions about what we discussed, shoot us a message or Gabor, and we can dig a little bit deeper.
Yep.
And Gabor is definitely the one for breathing.
Yeah.
That's well, thank you all very much.
Yep. Thank you, Gabor. Have a great day.
Yeah, same to you all, and have a good couple of restful weeks hopefully.